To the new Speaker of the House, whoever the hell that ends up being, and other GOP House leaders, here's my message to you. You have this job because you promised to represent the people. We, the people, are calling on you to condemn political violence. As you take on your new roles, I will be watching and waiting for public statements from each and every one of you to do just that. Enough is enough.
That is former Washington, D.C. Metro Police Officer Michael Fanone speaking directly to House Republicans yesterday. It's a message Fanone wrote in a letter delivered to those Republicans earlier this week, calling on them to condemn political violence. It was signed by more than 1,000 military veterans, active duty members, law enforcement officers, and military families. Joining us now, editor of The New Yorker, Pulitzer Prize-winning author David Remnick. He's written the introduction of The New Yorker's published book version of the final report from the House January 6th Select Committee. Also with us, presidential historian and Pulitzer Prize-winning author Doris Kearns Goodwin. Good morning to you both. Doris, I'll start with you on this second anniversary of that terrible day, the attacks on the Capitol on January 6th, 2021, and the way they tie into what we're seeing on the House floor right now. Now 11 ballots in, going up to a 12th now, without a speaker, without a seated House of Representatives. What do you see as the tie, and what are your thoughts on this second anniversary?
I think back to the early days after that anniversary actually happened, and I thought that a line had been drawn in the sand and that something was going to change in the Republican Party. Just remember what it was that Speaker McCarthy, hopeful Speaker McCarthy, was saying at the time. He said it was a criminal attempt to obstruct congressional responsibility, that the president bore responsibility for it, and that he probably should have a fact-finding commission and maybe deserve censure. What if he had stuck to that? What if McConnell, who also said that the president was practically and morally responsible for this, had led the Republican Party in a different direction? Instead, the focus was lost. The former president, still had this megaphone. They started turning back toward him. But then the September 6th, the January 6th Commission came forward with powerful arguments with the hearings. Public sentiment has changed. Lincoln said that nothing was more important than public sentiment. With it, anything was possible. Without it, nothing was possible. And that public sentiment has slowly but surely changed. It took much longer than it should have. And now we're seeing the fruits of that. We've got these election deniers who are the small group. They are not the majority in the Republican Party. They're certainly not the majority in the country. And their will not be hit. I'm optimistic that the tide has already turned. We may not see the results of it right away, but it's turned. That's the optimism that I feel. And the Republican Party is going to change. It's going to be shaken up.
So David, I've had somebody call me yesterday asking what the hell's going on. What am I watching on the House floor? I said, well, you may be watching a hangover from the Trump years. It may just be the last dying gasp of Trumpism. It could be like the Sixth Sense movie. If you haven't seen it, turn down the volume. They're dead. They just don't know it politically. And as Doris said, we have seen time and again, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 22, voters reject Trumpism. And are we seeing the last gasp of Trumpism on the House floor right now, or is it something else?
Well, that may be the triumph of hope over experience. I think we're seeing the latest chapter in an epic that's been going on for years and years, the radicalization of a Republican Party, a party whose leaders at every convention still insist on calling itself the party of Lincoln. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I mean, it's striking to me that, and I don't mean to go all John Meacham and Doris Kearns Goodwin on you. I'm not worthy of that, but just let me try for 1 second. In 1860, 1861, that winter, what's known as Secession Winter, Abraham Lincoln was awaiting having his inauguration in March in those days. And what was he hearing in Washington? He was hearing reports of, in a sense, a secession army coalescing in Virginia and elsewhere, and that they had plans to come to the Capitol. Does this sound familiar? Come to the Capitol and head off his inauguration and block him. And it was only thanks to John Breckinridge, who, by the way, is pro-secession, who went ahead and certified the election and did the right thing, which also has resonances with Mike Pence. And this was an event that we are commemorating today, its second anniversary, in which the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and many more were in danger of either being kidnapped or losing their lives or being murdered. And the sitting President of the United States, as we now learn from the January 6th report, did not care a whit for their safety. He didn't even care for the safety of the people demonstrating on his behalf. And now we are 2 years later, and we're seeing the Republican Party having this battle, which is soulless and shows the emptiness of their party at this point. Yes, there are many fewer election deniers on the Republican side in the House than there were 2 years ago. And clearly, people are hustling and looking for their place in this new Republican Party. But look at McCarthy himself. Is this somebody who's standing up for democracy, who's standing up for principle, for issues that mean something to him? No, he's fighting for his place. And at the same time, he's doing battle with Representative Gaetz. This is a moral avatar. It is a disgusting spectacle, and the Democrats are just standing back and letting it all happen. But no matter what happens at the end of today, or however this resolves itself, the Congress is going to be a poorer place for it, and the American people are, I fear, certainly in the short term, not going to see a very effective legislature on their behalf.
Doris, I applaud your optimism. I'm an optimist myself. But I'm looking at the pictures from 2 years ago, the events that took place on January 6th at the Capitol, and I still am staggered in sort of a disbelief that it actually happened here. And today we're going to witness another reprise of an event that's been going on all week long. Kevin McCarthy seeking to become Speaker of the House on an extraordinary number of occasions, being rejected. And my question to you is posed this way. Given the fact that he is supported by 20, that he is opposed by 20 hardline right-wing elements of the Republican Party, some of them still election deniers, it reminded him, and he's giving away the store piece by piece in order to attain enough votes to become Speaker. It reminded me of a phrase from nearly 50 years ago that took place in the village of Ben Tri in Vietnam, when the major in charge of destroying the village literally said on television, on national television, in a news item by Morley Safer, said it became necessary to destroy the village in order to save it. And I'm wondering, as you reflect on what's going on today and what led to today, what are your thoughts about perhaps we're destroying the village in order to save it?
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing, Mike. And I think what we're going to see, though, and this is where I have that hope, there's public sentiment out there. It may be that the Congress in the Republican side of it is not going to be able to do anything that's going to be for the will of the people. Maybe they will start doing the investigations that they're claiming they're going to do about Hunter Biden. The country is not going to stand for it. We got to remember the first time the country had a chance to speak on what happened on January 6th was during the midterm elections. And those midterm elections were powerfully, in a way that people did not expect them to be, against what they were seeing, against Trump, against the idea that the election had not been fairly won. And they spoke out. They're going to have another chance to speak out in 2024. And I think that that public sentiment is moving, and that, yes, we may have not very much accomplished in the next couple of years in the Republican side. There's executive orders that can happen on President Biden's side. And the country's moving forward. Lincoln said it takes a long time for public sentiment to really settle in. It took a long time for the anti-slavery movement to really have its will felt. It took a civil war, and maybe that's where your metaphor about the destruction before we have the construction. In fact, what we have to remember that old Abraham Lincoln said is that the democracy was really what was at issue in the Civil War, that if you could have a people in the South who refused to accept the legitimacy of his election in the North, then that meant that democracy is an absurdity. We had to fight for that. It took a civil war to fight for that. Hopefully we don't have to go to that extreme, but we have to fight for that idea that the peaceful transition of power is at the fundamental breaking point when you don't accept a loss in an election. President Trump refuses still to accept a loss. More and more people in the country, however, are knowing that he did lose that election, that it was not stolen, that it was a big lie. And we have to just trust public sentiment. And we have to hope that a younger generation coming up to fight for becoming election people and themselves will know that there's something more important than simply staying in power, that there's a purpose, there's a meaning to politics. I grew up in the 1960s. That was my decade. It was a terribly hard decade in many ways. There were assassinations, there were violence in the streets, but great things happened because people believed in public life. We had Medicare, Medicaid, aid to education, voting rights, civil rights movement. And you got to remember that in these worst of times, that was the best of times in many ways as well. I'm so glad that that was the generation. You too, Mike. That's your generation, Mikey. You're my friend of 50 years. You know what it was like to believe in public power and to fight for something. And we need to have young people feel that that's what politics can be again, not just the Kevin McCarthy's trying to save their soul and save their power. And that's the hope that I still feel in this country.